All right.
Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Today I wanted to talk about the controversial Joe Horn shooting. So, in Texas in 2007, so a while ago now, a white dude witnessed two black men breaking into his neighbour's home. Immediately he grabbed his pump-action shotgun and called the police. He then proceeded to wait for a police response. The police response was taking a long time. The dispatcher he was on the phone with told him repeatedly, "Don't do anything, property isn't worth anyone's life." Eventually it gets to the point where the police still haven't arrived, and the two criminals are now exiting the window and are getting away with the goods. Old Joe boy says, "Fuck this," and dismisses the dispatcher and confronts the burglars. The burglars subsequently rush him and he shoots them both. One pretty much falls down there and the other one runs off having been shot. Ultimately they both die. Joe is charged and then Joe is acquitted of all charges. So when it comes to this, I have some very strong opinions, some very strong conservative opinions here that I can share with you, you lovely people, that range approximately between 20 and 200 and something, depending on which subscribers are watching my video at the current moment. First of all, the dispatcher. I have a fucking real issue with this motherfucking dispatcher. There's a psychological behaviour called the bystander effect. This behaviour was like sort of popularised during like a crime, a publicised crime. The crime was like the rape and the murder of a woman named Kitty Genovese. This woman was like raped and murdered in the courtyard of her apartment block building, and that was like overlooked by all of her neighbours, and they pretty much all heard it, all watched, and all did nothing. The bystander effect is basically a conformity to doing nothing while witnessing something horrible. So if a few people don't do anything, then most of the people won't do anything. They'll sort of conform to what everyone's doing, and if everyone's doing nothing, nothing happens. Right here. In my opinion, this fucking dispatcher like attempts to try to be using this behaviour to prevent Horn from, you know, doing anything to stop the criminals. And like this is just like, you know, directly to the benefit of the criminals, right? So like in my opinion, that's just fucked up. In addition to this, like, sort of, you know, bystander effect behaviour, we have, like, another psychological behaviour at work here. This one's called, like, learned helplessness. And in my opinion, like, that's what the dispatcher's doing here. The dispatcher is attempting to condition old Joe Horn into, like, learned helplessness, basically. I fucking truly despise learned helplessness. Like, this is the behavior that has just empowered so many fucking horrible piece of shit acts, like, all throughout history. Yeah, it's just this, oh, it's bad, but if I, you know, step in, like, nothing good will come of it sort of deal, right? And it's just, you know, it's been present pretty much every genocide, politicide, you know, throughout history, like this very behaviour. And I fucking absolutely despise it, and I absolutely despise the dispatcher for attempting to condition this behaviour. I despise liberals for attempting to condition this behaviour as well, by like empowering the state and robbing people of gun rights, robbing people of the right to self-defence, Like, that whole deal. I fucking hate the idea of, like, learned helplessness, especially when the forces whose duty it is to, you know, prevent, you know, injustice and punish injustice and, like, catch criminals, catch evildoers, are failing in their fucking duty. I fucking loathe it. So just to, you know, harp on that point a bit more, like, in addition to, like, the learned helplessness attempting to be conditioned, we have to talk about the duty of the police, right? The state has a duty, through the police, who have been, you know, delegated that responsibility to enforce the law, prevent crime, etc., right? Not only did the politicians fail in this duty, like these two, you know, criminals who were breaking in and robbing people, were immigrants, so, like, you know, mass immigrations and, like, weak border is responsible for this crime pretty much. The police failed to prevent the crime, which they have a duty to do, so they've already failed in one duty, but also were seemingly about to fail to catch the perpetrators after the fact of the crime, when they were, like, getting away. So, like, we have, like, a threefold failure of duty, government, and, you know, police. It's just... And, like, in addition to that, it's conditioning the person who could have prevented the crime, Joe Horn, from doing anything. So it's like, it's just fucked. It's like liberal learned helplessness bullshit. It's absolutely fucked. Like, I also, like, especially have, like, an issue with the statement, the property is not worth your life, which was being repeated over and over and over again by the dispatcher. I have a fucking real big issue with this statement. Like, not only is it sort of scumbag and Marxist in principle, it's like seeming to erode, like, an individual's, you know, property rights, their concept of property rights in general. Like, if someone else wants it, then they can just sort of take it. It's like got this ugly sort of Marxist, you know, principle at work with it. Like, and that's fucking, you know, gross. And, like, just going on a quick side tangent, I absolutely despise the government tax idea of, like, ad valorem, like, as a tax. It's basically a yearly, you know, tax, not on, like, capital gains or anything like that, but just, like, a flat tax on the paper value of, like, an existing asset that you don't have access to. Like, that alone is, like, fucking bullshit. It's, like, straight up robbery. Like, especially considering there's no way to, you know, crystallize the paper profit of the asset without selling it, in which case, like, other taxes like stamp duty and capital gains taxes and all that sort of thing. Like, basically the government are thieving cunts. But, like, tangent over, back to, you know, property is not worth your life. The framing of the statement is in the criminal's benefit, like, in the wake of, like, police failure, right? Police and government failure of duty. Like, they haven't provided justice. Like, that's just unacceptable. And, like, when you think about it, like, the arithmetic of the statement, like, it's also, like, very, like, deceptive and, like, scumbag. Like, when you frame it that the criminal arithmetic, like, sort of, you know, changes, right? They've made the calculation. They're going to break in and take your things. Like, if you were there and, like, let's say you attempt to stop them or something, they're very likely to at least assault you, right? And, like, that's assuming, you know, they're not prepared to do worse if they don't want, like, witnesses to their crime. And, like, at that point, it's no longer, you know, an arithmetic of property versus life. It's like life versus life and property, like, with one side being responsible for both the potential assault interaction and the attempted robbery. Like, one side's clearly the bad actor. They're not only breaching the principle of property rights, they're also the impulsively violent party that's forcing the conflict as well. And, like, look, if they do decide, like, no witnesses, that way they can get away with their crime, why wouldn't they, like, not also decide, okay, might as well rape as well then? Like, you can only get one life sentence, right? One life sentence or death sentence, either way. You can't get, like, double life or double death sentences. And, like, if that's the case, it's just a moral failing of the state. And, like, the criminal tolerance of the left is, like, just a real issue. Especially in, like, terms of path to least resistance to, like, escalating crime. So, like, why is this sticking with me so hard? Well, I think it has something to do with, like, hawk and dove game theory. Like, everything the police did here selected for hawks in that game theory. Like, they maximized to select for more criminals, like, according to that specific game theory. They attempted to prevent Horn from inflicting wounding during the initial crime, which is, like, one of the two things which selects for doves is wounding, on the criminals, with, like, two of my most personally fucking hated psychological behaviours, that of, you know, the bystander effect and, you know, conditional learned helplessness. Like, they did it in the worst fucking way. Like, that's just absolutely scumbag, like, to start with. And they also seem to be failing in, like, their duty to inflict reprisal after the, you know, crime had taken place, which is, like, another one of their duties. With wounding and reprisal being the two conditions that select for doves in hawk and dove game theory, i.e. innocent people, not hawks, which are, you know, theoretically the criminals. So the police seem to be failing in both of those, which is like a direct selection for, you know, maximizing criminals in a society. But, like, okay, so in the end, Joe did essentially play out the mechanism of wounding during the crime. Like, and I've got to say, just, like, thank God for the Second Amendment in America and the right to self-defense and castle doctrine in, like, Texas. Like, as a result of, you know, Joe Horn's, you know, actions, there are, like, now 2 fewer hawks in the world, like, preying on doves. There's now, like, 2 fewer criminals. Like, they're not going to re-offend at all. But, like, I live in Australia, and Australia sucks fucking big dicks. Like, Australia has, like, no right to self-defense, no castle doctrine, and no Second Amendment. And, like, historically speaking, like, a massively corrupt police force as well. That, like, not only fails in their duty regularly, but, like, in old COVID mandate protest times, like, assaulted, like, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, like, during those protests. And those protests were directly for individual rights and individual health. When you think of it like that, like, the police are fucking shit in Australia. And in my opinion, it stems from 2 main things. The first, you need a Bill of Rights that guarantees both freedom of speech, self-defense, and gun rights, basically. You need those things. You need the government to consciously say individuals have a right to self-defense. One of the issues with Australia's government, and, like, Canada's government as well, was the authoritarian leftists in charge at the time explicitly said individuals do not have a right to self-defense. Like, it's the government's role to, you know, arbitrate that. That is complete fucking horse shit. Like, especially given, like, the history of police forces that have had unchecked power, right? Like, in a ton of instances, they are like the main, you know, perpetrators of genocides. Like, take the Armenian genocide, for example. That was straight up the gendarme, the Turkish police, like, enforcing, like, the mass, like, eviction of the Armenians. Like, it was straight up them. They were, like, marching them. And, like, that's to say nothing about the beatings, the rapes, the starvation, like, even, like, the straight-up murders when they were, like, beating them to death with, like, axe handles and shit. Like, that's police, right? That's police in a corrupt state. The Rwandan genocide, same sort of deal. The police were setting up the checkpoints to check for the papers, to, you know, identify the racial class that was getting targeted, like that. It's always the police that are, like, the perpetrators of this. Like, it was the German army, the German secret police, and the regular police that were not only rounding up the Jews in Nazi Germany to kill them, but also driving them out to forests to execute them. Like, they didn't all just get executed in camps. No, a ton of them were, like, shot through the fucking back of the head, like, in the middle of the forest, in front of these big ditches where they were shooting them. And that was all police. Like, stop giving me this shit about, like, you know, individuals not having the right to self-defense and, you know, pressing this stupid point that police should be granted, like, completely unchecked power. No! It's fucking stupid to give police unchecked power. They've, like, caused, like, several genocides throughout history. It's, like, fucking stupid. Why would you do that? Like, that's the dumbest shit ever. And, like, in addition to all that, now our political classes are, like, fucking mass importing, like, criminal elements from other countries and just turning up the tension. And if it's anything like fucking England, I don't know if you guys have seen what's happening with England, they're just failing to enforce the law in England. Like, when it comes to all these bloody Islamic grooming gang rapes, they're just not arresting them, or they're only arresting them for, like, 2 years. You get, like, more time in jail for, like, hate speech and that sort of stupid shit. Like, one lady was, like, called one of the fellas in the grooming gang a rapist or something. She got sentenced to more time in prison than the dude who, like, friggin' gang raped someone. Like, that's what happens when you give, you know, first of all, stupid fucking leftists that are, like, ridiculously tolerant of, you know, criminals, like, power, but also give police unchecked power. Like, and, like, that's just, like, one example. You've got the lesbian Nana example, where, like, this fucking Karen on a power trip in the police fucking basically assaulted and, you know, arrested this, like, autistic girl for saying this, you know, short-haired policewoman who looks a bit like a lesbian looked like her lesbian grandmother. And, like, then she just, like, roughly manhandled the autistic girl out of the house and arrested her. Like, there's no fucking judgment there shown. There's, like, no compassion there. And the power imbalance is fucking insane, especially in, like, England and Australia, where there's, like, no semblance of justice if the police are the only ones that have guns and they're in the wrong. Like, because we don't have gun rights. We don't have the right to self-defense in, like, either England, Australia, or Canada anymore. Like, it should be explicitly delegated to the individual that you have the right for individual self-defense. If the police are in the wrong, like, there's no fucking check against that. If you were to get, like, a corrupt policeman, and serial killers have done this in the past, by the way, impersonating a police officer, and they've got a gun, you literally have no physical defense against that. You're just fucked, right? And that's how, like, I forget the name of, it was Charles something, but it was like a serial killer who was doing exactly that to capture women, like, rape them and then kill them. He was, like, impersonating an officer, and there was, like, no way to, you know, defend against it. He just had flashing lights and a spotlight on his car. He would drive behind women, pull them over, capture them, rape them, kill them. Like, you need delegated individual self-defense gun rights, right? To prevent that sort of thing. Period. And if a copper is corrupt, hey, you should have the ability to, out of self-defense, kill a corrupt cop if he's trying to do something that's wrong. Period. Like, in states, like, you know, places like Australia, and states, like, there was, like, another incident where, like, an old lady was just run down by, like, a riot copper on a fucking police horse, right? Just fucking, she had a walking frame, she just got run over by it. Like, I don't think anything fucking happened there. And look, it's not even just all that it's related to, you know, like vaccine mandates and all that sort of shit. Like, which is obviously wrong if you know anything about fucking history of, you know, forced medical experimentation and all that sort of shit. Like, it's obviously wrong. It was always obviously wrong. It was always stupid to fucking do that shit. But, like, it applies in other instances too. Like this, you know, police union, this fucking thin blue line, whatever it's fucking called. Where we had, like, another case in Australia. There was, like, a fucking woman in a nursing home, like a fucking 90-year-old with, like, a walking frame, right? And, like, the fucking copper who got, like, called up to deal with her fucking just outright tased her, and she, like, fucking fell down and, like, broke bones, and, like, she fucking died soon after. Like, that should be fucking manslaughter, like, outright, right? Like, there's no self-defense. Like, a fucking 90-year-old with a walking frame, like, with a knife in one hand and a walking frame in the other, there is fucking, you know, there's very little chance she's gonna land a fucking, you know, a bloody cully fucking knife trick move that fucking stabs you right in the neck and kills you, right? And if you're a cop with, like, a stab vest on or something, like, just grab a fucking wrist. Like, what's wrong with that cunt? He's like a murderer. Like a murderer in the cop, and he just fucking completely got away with it, and that woman just fucking died as a result of his actions. And, like, our stupid fucking commissioners and shit in Australia, they just, oh, we're doing an investigation, we'll let you know what comes of it. And it's like, okay, so we're gonna trust you to investigate yourselves, are we? That seems very fucking convenient for you. And, like, where's the check? Where's the balance? Where's anything, right? Yeah, like, self-defense is the way to go. Like, clearly, like, in a healthy society. Self-defense, right to self-defense, right, gun rights, that's the way to go. And, like, if people were granted, like, a very relaxed right to self-defense and, you know, gun rights, you would have police under less stress as well, because, like, they wouldn't be forced to respond to everything. They'd be responding after the fact of wounding and, like, that sort of thing. Like, they'd be dealing with perpetrators in theory that have already been wounded. Like, that's part of the hawk and dove game theory, right? There's two mechanisms at work to stop the hawks against the doves. Assume, like, the hawks are the bad actors, assumed to be more powerful, that sort of thing. If a hawk has robbed a dove, the dove has managed to wound it, and the hawk's trying to get away, it is significantly more likely to fall victim to reprisal after the fact from the police as well. Like, just fucking obviously, right? It's just simple common sense. Like, if you arm everyone in a society, they know what they're doing, they know what the laws are, you've been consistent with the laws, like, everything is then a hard target. Like, the criminals would have no opportunity, basically. Sure, they might get illegal guns too. Yeah, look at the current state of things in Australia. Fucking biker gangs and drug fucking dealers and shit, they're all fucking armed, they all have illegal guns. The innocent people are the only ones without fucking guns. Like, that's the current state of things. If you legalized guns and gave everyone a Second Amendment, gave everyone the ability to train with the guns, guess what? Then the criminals and the innocent people are on equal footing when it comes to the ability to use force. Everything's a fucking hard target then. And if you're a hard target, you're probably not going to get fucked with, right? It's like just basic common sense. And like that applies to America with like mass shooters and shit as well, right? Because mass shooters never pick hard targets to shoot up. When they do, they usually maybe get one person, usually don't get anyone, and then they're fucking, you know, shot through the head. Just like that mass shooter that tried to shoot up the church in the south in like a 2A state. He walked in, he shot like one person, he wounded another person, and then someone drew on him and shot him through the fucking head, and he was dead. And the threat was over. Like, mass shooters don't pick hard targets. Why do you think they shoot up schools and stuff with like no security guards on them and shit? Everyone there doesn't have a gun, right? Of course they're gonna kill people. It doesn't matter if you're like some fucking retarded, autistic, you know, piece of shit, like scrawny weakling with a gun. If you're in a school where no one has a gun, you've got like the immediate power advantage, right? And you've also got the element of surprise, especially like, which just multiplies it, like considering like people in schools don't have guns and there's no guards on schools. If you put armed guards on schools, like immediately there'd be like less shootings at those schools. Because they'd then be considered harder targets and like much more difficult to shoot up. It's just common sense. And like, if you have an armed dude who knows what he's doing, and you have like a fucking scrawny shit autistic school shooter who's like fucking, you know, mentally weak and everything like that, I'm gonna put my money on the dude who knows what he's doing rather than the school shooter. Like just in a simple, like, you know, forced confrontation scenario. And look, even if the armed guard does still get got by the school shooter, there's a good chance that the armed guard's gonna at least wound the school shooter, right? And I don't know if you know this about school shooters, they usually fucking shoot themselves as soon as they're wounded or something, right? So wouldn't it just make more sense to, you know, arm everyone? To allow everyone like a, you know, the equality of opportunity when it comes to force. Like, outright. There's more good people in the world than there are bad people. If all the good people are armed, the bad people don't fucking stand a chance. They're outnumbered like 20-1. Makes sense to me. I don't know why it doesn't make sense to these fucking leftist cunts in government. Probably because they're usually trying to implement, you know, totalitarian governments and control people. But, you know, that's just me. That's just my opinions on the matter.